If you're a non-native English speaker, you don't necessarily need a perfect English accent to convey executive presence in the professional world. You just need to slightly shift the vocabulary that you choose to use that will signal more confidence and authority when you speak in professional settings. Today, I'm going to show you 3 executive communication styles that will really help you if you are a non native English speaker who is also a professional. If you're new here, welcome to Arc English. We help professionals go from intermediate to advanced English much faster by working smarter and not necessarily harder. I'm a business person myself, but the communication styles that I'm going to show you in this video are applicable to different professions across different industries. Now, the first principle comes down to eliminating filler words such as like or as you're speaking, especially in a professional context. This is okay to do in a casual context. And frankly, no one really cares if you say or like sometimes when you're having a casual conversation. Everybody does it. Even native English speakers do this frequently. However, in a professional setting or a business or corporate context, this actually matters a lot more than you probably think it does. By using filler words such as like, or basically, or literally, it really signals hesitation, which shows a lack of confidence. And if you're showing a prospective client for your company or your business a lack of confidence of what you're saying, and if they cannot trust you, then that really becomes an issue. Executives across different industries usually replace these filler words such as like, and basically just with 1 or 2 seconds of silence, just to quickly reflect. By doing this, it makes them seem more thoughtful and more in control. So, for example, instead of saying, so the project is basically finished, but there's just a few things we need to tweak. Instead of saying that with all the filler words, you should just say the project is nearing completion. That 1 to 2 seconds of silence really has the listener lean in. And this may seem small, but I'm telling you, in a business and professional setting, that this is going to make you sound far more trustworthy than someone who uses like, and basically as they're trying to convey or explain a certain presentation, a project, a document, etc. The second principle comes down to vertical versus horizontal communication. In slang English, we call this code switching. And basically, all code switching or vertical versus horizontal communication means is you're just adapting your style of English communication based on who you're speaking to. So, for example, if you're speaking to the secretary of your company, you may speak in a slightly more casual way to make the secretary feel more comfortable. However, if you're speaking to the CEO and you want to discuss something that is very important or very critical for the company, you may convey yourself in a more formal way. So, simply put, horizontal English is considered to be more casual, and vertical English is considered to be more concise, more matter of fact, more results oriented, and more formal. For example, let's say you work in the tech industry. Horizontal English would sound like, let's try to fix this bug today, if you're just speaking to your team members. Now, if you're speaking to the CEO who is very concerned with the results of the company, you may speak with vertical English and speak more formal and say something such as, we are currently mitigating the risk of this technical error, or something along the lines of that. And also, for those of you who live or work in multilingual cities or multilingual environments, code switching also applies to switching languages depending on who you're speaking to within that business environment. Code switching is something that some people just pick up and do naturally. However, with some people, you will need to be a little bit more mindful of this, especially in a professional or business setting. And if you need to improve your English communication skills for work related purposes, very soon we will be releasing customized training programs based on your profession and your career goals. If you'd like to learn more, I'll leave a link somewhere in the description or the pinned comment below. And the third principle is mastering action verbs. And this is specifically critical when it comes to forming your resume and also going through quarterly or yearly reviews if your company has them. To put it simply, action verbs are like regular verbs, except they carry a lot more emphasis. For example, instead of saying, I helped create this new marketing plan, whereas someone with more authority who speaks more confidently and more assertively would say, I spearheaded the marketing initiative, which led to a 15% increase in lead generation, or something along the lines of that. Just by using action verbs that put emphasis on something, instead of saying, I helped with this, you said, I spearheaded this. It makes you sound much more assertive, which makes you sound more confident, which makes you sound more trustworthy, and you see how it goes. Again, for casual conversation in English, people don't really care. This is not that important. But for a professional or business setting, this absolutely makes a difference in terms of how much your colleagues internally and your clients externally trust you. Speaking is a much more important skill in the professional world than you could begin to imagine. And many of you could probably even think of situations that happened to you in the past where you were on the receiving end of someone else who communicated very poorly. So, to recap, the three principles that are going to help you have more executive presence in the professional world. The first involves eliminating filler words such as like, or basically. Instead, just pause for 1 or 2 seconds, think about what you're going to say, and then deliver the message. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but I've actually been doing that a lot throughout this video, where if I'm just reaching for a word or thinking of what to say, I'll pause for 1 or 2 seconds and then I'll say it. The second principle comes down to code switching, or understanding the difference between vertical communication and horizontal communication. Horizontal is casual communication with your peers, and vertical communication is when you want to speak more formally about something that is a little more serious. You should always know your audience and which one is appropriate for different circumstances. And of course, this is going to vary from industry to industry, as some industries are just more informal by nature, such as if you work in the sports industry, versus some other industries like finance that can be more formal, especially when you're dealing with clients who need to trust you with their money. And not only does it vary by industry, it also varies by the specific role or the specific position that you are doing within that industry. And then the third principle comes down to mastering action verbs. If you listen to any of the best communicators in the business world in English, or just in the professional world in your industry, you are going to notice that they intentionally use action verbs to put emphasis on certain things that they are trying to say. Action verbs are also used strategically. For example, you may use basic verbs to describe things that aren't that important or aren't the main takeaway from what you're trying to say. And then you may use an action verb for the sentence that you want everybody to remember. If you read books, authors who write books are also very intentional with when they use basic verbs versus when they use action verbs to put emphasis on something. This is a pattern you'll definitely notice as you just observe more advanced English media. If English is not your first language, do not feel bad if your communication skills do not reflect these advanced communication techniques. There are even native English speakers who can improve on this. Even myself, I can improve on my communication skills constantly, probably all the way until the day that I die. But these three principles are definitely things to be very mindful of, especially when you're observing advanced communicators in the English language. And they really do give you executive presence. And you will notice this with the industry leaders in your particular industry. The vast majority of people at the executive level of any industry or profession tend to have really advanced and very intentional communication skills, especially in the English language. Even with international countries that are not based in English speaking regions, if you want to get to an executive level, you will need to learn some of these nuances and you will need to learn how to apply a lot of these nuances when you communicate in the English language. In other words, your English will need to be advanced if you ever want to thrive at an executive level in your particular industry. If you want to better your English for work related purposes, be sure to subscribe to this channel for more content like this. And be sure to leave a comment down below letting me know what your profession is, where you're from, and what your native language is. I'm always very curious to know. If you want to learn more advanced nuances when it comes to how to sound more persuasive when communicating in English, be sure to watch the next video on the screen.